How do guys? So we're just out on a walk at the moment, so my phone out. And obviously we've been seeing a lot of that stuff about the Manchester police, Manchester airport attacks against the police. Now first and foremost, I'm going to say, like, those coppers did not deserve to have that done to them at all. You know, they don't go to work to get that done to them. But it is, I don't want to go. There's loads of people talking about different things. I don't want to touch on what most people are talking about. For me, and it's something that I've spoken about a lot in the past, which is, you know, you've got political philosophy, which is saying that like a 5'4" woman can join the police. You know, she's built like a stick, and you can expect her to take on violent men. It just ain't going to happen, and that's the reality of it. You know, we've literally just seen video footage. I'm not going to share the video footage here of what happens when you expect that to happen. Now, there is to a certain degree a part of this. It is to do with cultural differences. It is to do with, obviously, people coming from different parts of the world and having different expectations. However, and I will be clear on this isn't a unique thing to the police. Obviously, you know, I mean, going back to, like, I don't know, the 1960s even, let's say, when you had close enough to 100% of Britain being British people, you know, like, police even then were getting attacked and stabbed and beaten up. You know, it's not unique to any one group of people, but what it is the increased number of events that you can expect to happen with different groups of people. And when you have people coming from places like Pakistan or Afghanistan, they don't respect the police like they do in Western developed nations, and they especially don't respect women, assuming they can have authority over men. You know, it's not surprising that you're going to get a woman getting her nose broken by a man from that part of the world. That's just the reality of it. And the other part of it as well is what are these tiny women expecting is going to happen to them at some point? Like, have they been so brainwashed by Marvel movies and other such types of media where a stick-thin woman who's about as tall as me bloody children can take on a man who's 6 foot tall and, you know, like, do a half shoulder throw and put him into a rear naked choke? Like, are they really that deluded that they think that's how it's going to play out? And I've had this debate in the past with people as well, and we've had people. I've had people saying to me things like, "Well, you know, you don't need to be 6 foot tall to use pepper spray or a taser or a gun, blah blah blah." And I can't be asked getting into those conversations with people, because the people who say that are people who've got no experience of dealing with things like using firearms and using weapons. You know, have never had any experience with them, and of knowing the difficulty of pulling those things out in such close quarters, as was exemplified in that scenario. You know, you need something like, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it's something like, you need a distance of about 16 feet. And for people who work in metric, 1 foot is 30 centimetres. So do the maths yourself. You know, but you need a distance of about 16 feet to be able for a competent person to pull out a firearm and discharge it without getting attacked by an unarmed person. Sorry guys, it's got a busy road here. You know, so this whole thing about the police being armed as well isn't as simple as you think. You can't just give a tiny person a load of weapons and say, oh, they'll be all right out on the beat. Because unfortunately, physics is a real thing. Physics is very real. And so is the disparity between men and women, and the strength and abilities of men and women. You know, reaction times and bone densities, heart size, red blood cell count within the blood. Men just have huge advantages when it comes to fighting over women. And the fact that that woman only walked away with a broken nose, really, she's incredibly lucky with that. Thank you. Thank you. You know, she's incredibly lucky with that she only walked away with a broken nose. That guy could have knocked all of her teeth out. He could have given her permanent damage to her face with that. She could have been left with life-altering injuries requiring multiple events of plastic surgery. So, you know, to walk away with just a broken nose, in my opinion, is very, very lucky. But again, this is, again, the political ideology meeting with reality. Expectations versus reality, I think, is the phrase, isn't it? You know, people have got these expectations that you can just import millions of people from all over the world and everybody will just get along and sing Kumbaya, and there'll be no consequences to that. When we have these utopianist ideals, or highly steeped in feminist theory, which is like, a woman can do frontline policing, and then they go, when you challenge it, they go, oh, why can't they do frontline policing? We have women on the front line. It's like, well, there you go. Yes, they technically can. You technically can put a woman in a police uniform and you can give her all the police equipment and you can give her all the training. So yes, she can technically do frontline policing. But what are the consequences of that? Because I'm telling you now, any man who went into that situation probably would have ended up with a broken nose. But the difference is though, is that, and I'm not saying this is all, again, I'm speaking in generalised languages here, but obviously it's not generalised, you know, it's unique to every person. But most men wouldn't be sat there crying afterwards, going, you know, the video is absolutely harrowing of that woman. Absolutely. Hi, you alright?
Hello.
Absolutely harrowing. Are you okay there? Yeah. Yeah, just a little trip. You know, it's absolutely harrowing what happened to her with that. You know, she's actually in tears. You know, with all blood that's streaming down her face and that. She can't make sense of what's happened to her. But again, you know, most men of a particular age, you know, like mid-20s, have usually been in a couple of fights in their life, whether they like it or not. That's just the reality of being a man, I'm afraid. Most women haven't. Most women go through their entire life having never been punched in the face. And when it happens to them, they don't know how to deal with it. And again, this is just the reality of the world coming crashing down on them. That men and women are not the same. It's just mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling to me that we've got such a deluded philosophy which has taken such deep control over our society. And not just here in the UK, I mean, this is across the whole West. Like, you know, I think in America they've got the Green Berets, which are like the equivalent of like the UK SAS. You know, like they're like an elite fighting force. They let women in. Like, that to me is absolutely insane. Like, it's just dangerous. Recklessly dangerous though. To the point of it's actually in my opinion, it's undermining the fighting effectiveness of the Green Berets by doing that. For multiple reasons, which I'm not going to go into here right now. Including not just the physical differences, but other things like the psychology of seeing a woman in distress as to seeing a man in distress on the male. You know, we'll go into it. Actually, that wasn't bad, but you know, like if as a man you see a male teammate in distress, you're going to react differently to if you see a female teammate in distress. That's not because men and women value men and women different, but it is because men and women value men and women different. Because of human psychology, it's human nature. And you can't overcome millions of years of human nature. You just can't. You know, but then there's also things like long-lasting injuries as well to people. You know, like women, like I said before, women's bones aren't as strong as men's. Well, what do you think is going to be the effect of getting women to carry like 80 to 120 kilos of weight on the back? You know, tactical equipment, you know, mission critical equipment. You know, like enough men get lifelong injuries from serving in the military. And you're talking big men as well. Like, I'm not exactly the biggest of men, I'm 5'8", but you know, guys a lot bigger than me. You know, go through the military, come out and like the backs are blown, the hips are blown, the knees are blown. But what do you think that's going to go to women? What do you think that's going to happen to women whose bones aren't as strong and aren't as capable, and whose body shape is actually, believe it or not, different to men's? You know, it's going to have long-lasting, permanent, life-altering injuries to those women. You know, the men find it hard enough to live after a lot of men after they leave the military. Well, guess what? You know, it's like you hear about old women falling over and breaking the bones a lot. You don't really hear about it happening to men. And again, there's a reason for that. Because of testosterone. Testosterone, believe it or not, is important to your bone density and your bone strength. And as you get older, your testosterone levels drop. So again, this causes, when older women fall over and hurt them, they end up falling over and breaking bones. Well, what do you think is going to happen to those women when they're even older, who've been through the military, like Green Beret training and stuff like that? They're not going to be able to actually live when they get to a certain age. We're destroying women's bodies on the altar of ideology. And that's what this comes down to at the end of the day, guys. And it's the same with this bloody Manchester scenario. You know, there's a bunch of people who've decided to go, women can do frontline policing roles, and you're a bigot if you say they can't. And we have to let them do it, because if you don't let them do it, you're a sexist. And the courts have got involved in this. The judges are just as responsible. Human rights lawyers are just as responsible. Those women getting their noses broken in Manchester Airport, I'm afraid, is down to the cowardice of people who haven't been willing to stand up to women and say no to them. And that's what this comes down to. It's not that I hate women. It's not that I think women are stupid. But unfortunately, we've got a lot of people who don't. It's like giving a child a box of matches and expecting them to be responsible with it and safe with it. You know, these people, when they join the police or they join the military, they don't know the consequences of what they're getting into. They've no idea. They're just fed all the BS and told that everything will be okay and don't worry about it. We'll train you to deal with these situations, whilst actually ignoring the real world dangers and threats to it. For Christ's sake, you know, like I said, I'm 5'8". I'm not the hardest of men, but I can look after myself. Well, Jesus Christ, I wouldn't expect to join the police and not get my nose broken at least once in my career. That's just the reality of it. You know, I'm going to struggle if I'm fighting a 6'3" man. I'm going to really struggle with that. There's no way a 5'4" woman can expect to fight a 6'3" man. It ain't going to happen. She's going to get curb stomped by him every day of the frigging week. You're right, guys. Just a bit of an edit in here on the end. Another thing as well that I just remembered was at the end of the video, the female police officer as well. She's obviously, I mean, literally crying. I'm not even saying that like to be degrading. She's actually crying. Again, unsurprising. But she's also saying like nobody helped her, you know, and people were just filming it. Well, what do you expect? And I'm not saying this out of any sort of disdain for individual police officers, you know. And I've said this multiple times before, and I will say it again, guys. Most police officers are great people. You know, they do a very, very hard job. You know, it's very thankless. And they do the sort of things that nobody else would really want to do. You know, like if you've been in a car crash and you're pinned in there and you're bleeding, you know, your guts are hanging out. It's going to be a police officer who's holding your hand, you know, and telling you everything's going to be okay, just wait for the ambulance to turn up. Or, you know, if your house is burnt down and you've lost loved ones and you're at work, it's going to be a copper who's turning up, you know, and taking their hat off and delivering that unfortunate news to you. You know, these people are doing some pretty terrible jobs, you know, that nobody really wants to do, or any sane person would really want to do, but need to be done. You know, so we've really got to remember that, guys. You know, the police are not our enemies, and without the police, civilization, as we understand it and know it in the West, would collapse. And I'm saying that without any hubris. You know, I'm saying that you know, that's not an exaggeration either. That is literally what would happen. Our civilization would cease. We need the police. But, you know, we've seen in recent years things like the police taking a knee to Black Lives Matter. We've seen the police doing things like, well, a recent police officer, a hero police officer who rescued somebody from a river, was sacked because he didn't speak to a teenager armed with a knife politely enough. You know, we've seen another retired police officer getting dragged through the courts and 2 years of hell for something he tweeted online that wasn't even controversial. And when, you know, the video footage shows officers in his house describing his books as very Brexity. You know, we've seen the police with all the rainbow lanyards and doing all the gay pride and stuff like that. I mean, near where I live, Blackpool, there's police cars even today driving around with trans pride flags over the entire car and gay pride flags. I'm not just talking about like a little flag, I'm talking the entire side of the car. The entire vehicle is covered in this LGBT crap. And yeah, that's my opinion, it is crap. It's political BS. So, are you surprised as an individual officer? And yeah, I know most individual officers don't go along with that stuff. But if a police officer walked past me now, I mean, there was a report on GB News the other day. A guy who tried rescuing his daughter multiple times from a rape gang in, I think it was Rochdale or Rotherham. And the police arrested him and took him away and then de-arrested him multiple times. And they've just been found, well, it's not finished yet, but it looks like that the police have actually falsified arrest records of him to change the location of where they arrested him and put drunk and disorderly down. And this has come to light because they put an address down on the arrest ticket of a house that he didn't live in until 5 years after the event. You know, now if I had a police officer walk past me now here, how do I know that those officers aren't involved in that kind of behaviour? It's not like they've got a green light or a red light above their head telling me as a member of the public whether they are corrupt coppers or whether they are genuine coppers. We just have no way of telling. So this is what is going to happen when the police are behaving in such highly politicised and highly corrupt manners. And it's not individual cases, this is across the whole of the country. You know, the rape gangs cover-up is literally the entirety of England. Every single police constabulary is involved in it. Every one of them. And it happened such a long time ago, some of these cases, that you know that senior police officers will have been up to their necks in it. Not all of them, but how do we tell which senior police officer has been involved in covering up rape gangs and which hasn't? How do we know which police officers are basically communists? Because that's what a lot of this comes from. A lot of this global homo rainbow dildo I love immigrants ideology is a reinterpretation of communism. You know, so how can we tell the difference? Well, we can't. So when you see two police officers, and you know, they've put minorities on the pinnacle of a plinth. You know, with the behaviour like the Southport massacre, like a man of Rwandan parents butchered loads of kids They lied about who he was. Well, they didn't lie. Technically they didn't lie, right? But it was so deceptive in how they worded everything, as I would call it, lying by omission, right? So, and not only that, but anybody who questioned that, they came down like a ton of bricks on. White people, that is. Like, there was Muslims walking around the streets with swords and attacking people. They didn't come down on them, did they? No, they said, oh, we'll look after you. Just put your swords in the mosque. But we're here to protect you. The white people who were out protesting and getting upset, the police came down on them like a ton of bricks. Well, unfortunately, this is what the public sees. This is the perception that they've created, that they are not there to protect people that look like me. They are there to protect minorities. So when you see the police fighting with minorities, all I'm going to think to myself is, well, if I get involved in that, the police are going to turn on me and arrest me. So they'll still arrest the brown people, but then they'll arrest me afterwards as well for whatever trumped up charges that the police want to make up. So that's the reality of it. And this is the bed that the police have required. But unfortunately, young officers like that lady in that Manchester situation, they aren't aware of all of this. So they're going into these jobs not realising the amount of political BS that is on top of them, and that the public are not on their side anymore. And unfortunately, again, this is the reality that's been created by all this politicisation of the police. And they've only got themselves to thank for it. You know, they've done, well, not the rank and file coppers, the senior coppers, but unfortunately, they're insulated from all of that. You know, it's not the chief constable of Manchester who's going into Manchester Airport and getting his face stoved in by a bunch of minorities, is it? And the public just standing there watching and filming it with cameras. No, it's his officers under his watch. But unfortunately, it's people, I'm not saying it is him or her specifically, but it is people of his position who've created that situation. And that's the reality of it. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you and goodbye.